Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. McCabe and Dr. Holdren, for being here. Good to see both of you again. I'm a little conflicted because I want to focus on the one hand on the reliability issues that Mr. Johnson brought up earlier, but I think I'm going to start with the flexibility issues, because both the agency and the administration have been quite adamant about the flexibility that the rule provides states. And I'm wondering how much flexibility was considered for states with regard to the rate of emissions themselves. I mean, did states have much flexibility in determining the emission rates?
Well, under the Clean Air Act, it's EPA's responsibility to determine the level of reductions to be achieved, or the ultimate performance level. But then equally under the Clean Air Act, the states have the responsibility but the opportunity to design a plan that achieves those goals using the best system that makes sense for them. Okay, so going to another area of flexibility, and this was a question that was raised by a constituent of mine who's in the room, Perry Schaefer, who has a small business, a couple of small businesses in North Dakota called Environmental Services. He provides service and sells products to power plants largely. And how much analysis under the Regulatory Flexibility Act was put into this rule? And first of all, I guess, are you familiar with the Regulatory Flexibility Act and what it does? I am. Okay,
so how much analysis was put into consideration of that act, and can you perhaps elaborate a bit on what the findings were and how it's applied in the proposed rule?
So the industrial sector that's addressed by the rule is the power plant sector, and those are primarily large businesses. So the economic analysis that we do looks at the impact that we expect from the types of choices that people will be making in order to comply with the rule, given what we see happening in the economy right now.
So when you're applying the analysis for the Regulatory Flexibility Act, you're considering the flexibility of the power plant, but not all of the small businesses that are affected by the rule as they impact the power plant. Is that what I just heard you say?
Well, we look at the approaches that we see being used by states and companies around the country, and the types of things that they are doing, and look at the expected impacts of those on costs and on the economy.
So besides the precedent-setting piece of this, which we haven't even begun to address, what the impact will be if this rule goes forward, if it's accepted and becomes the tradition and culture of the land, what impacts it's going to have on manufacturing and the rest of the industrial sector. Is it not true that the industrial sector depends tremendously on electricity, and that, in fact, whether it's small business, medium-sized business, or large business, there is a very direct, not just an indirect, but a very direct economic impact? And is the flexibility there to address small business?
Well, the analysis that we've done shows that the effect actually will be positive by reducing electric bills in 2030 as a result of the energy efficiency, and that the rule will lead to significant investment in the kinds of activities that support small businesses across our community in energy efficiency and renewable energy and other technologies.
Since you brought up this lowering of rates, or the lowering of the bills in 2030 due to efficiency, being a former regulator, economic regulator, utility regulator, I know full well that efficiency is not free. It's not even cheap. It may not even be the cheapest alternative, although I know that's commonly thought. But in a state where our retail rates today are average about between 8 and 9 cents a kilowatt hour, the cost of compliance with efficiency standards is oftentimes greater than the cost of the electricity itself. And the other thing I would raise is the plants have to be paid for, and they have to be paid for over the lifespan of the plant. And if you impose efficiency, which costs people, and frankly I think is a greater burden on the poor than it is on the people that can afford the efficiency methods, doesn't the cost of that plant, the stranded costs, still have to be covered one way or another, and whether it's at 8 cents or 9 cents or 10 cents or 30 cents a kilowatt hour? I mean, is that all factored in, or is this a very stagnant analysis, which I'm afraid it is.
There's a lot in your question, Congressman.
Yes.
But on the question of stranded assets, one of the advantages to the long trajectory that the proposal has in it, which is compliance by 2030, was exactly to address those sorts of issues. We recognize that that's a reality, and we wanted to have a plan that would allow states to make choices that would avoid stranded assets.
And I think the other advantage is that when you go that far out, nobody's going to remember that we promised that rates were going to come down in 2030. My time has expired. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Cramer.